What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 548 of AskGSM here today for Wednesday, May 29, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop a question on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below on the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Let's get right into it here. Jordan B. from YouTube, their question was, what is your favorite underrated Shield match? Mine is The Shield versus Team Hell No and The Undertaker on the April 22nd, 2013 edition of Raw. That's a good question. So, not underrated as in, TLC 2012 with The Shield against Ryback and Team Hell No, or them against the Wyatt family, or against Evolution from early 2014. Probably a TV match would make more sense. My favorite underrated Shield match, I'm pretty sure, was from early July of 2013 on Main Event. It was them against the Usos and Christian, and the team of Christian and the Usos actually won. So the Shield and Orton, Ryback? Was it Ryback? I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Team Hell No and Orton. I think that was the trio. I think they were the first team to beat the Shield, but it was by countout. So I think the first actual match they lost by pinfall might have been the one that I'm referring to on Main Event of all fucking shows I know. Like I said, in early July 2013 and mid-2013. And it was a really good match. I'm pretty sure it was Christian who picked up the win, maybe by pinning Ambrose. And I don't know if they ended up having them face off for the United States Championship after that, because Dean Ambrose was the United States Champion by that time. Christian went on to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship that summer. I remember that. I don't know if we ever ended up getting him and Ambrose, though, 1-on-1 for the United States Championship, even though I'm pretty sure he pinned Ambrose in that match. But that would probably be my favorite underrated Shield match. Micah Does It from Twitter, their question was, do you think WWE will do The Rock versus Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania 41, similar to Daniel Bryan at WrestleMania 30? Then at 42, we get Rock versus Roman, the one-on-one match. The Rock said he's a long gamer. This is what I've come up with. How do you feel about it? I don't really like the idea personally. I could see them doing that. I really don't like it, though, because I feel like you've built up the animosity so much in the first half of 2014. I saw the Daniel Bryan part of your question and got confused with a decade ago. They built up so much animosity between Rock and Rhodes in the first half of 2024 that I feel like it would be a sin to not do that match as a singles match. We are getting Rock and Roman at some point. We already fucking know that. The Rock will lose to Roman. That should probably be what ends this story, unless they do multiple matches, and that's fine too. I don't even really want Cody and The Rock in Mania. I wanted that match before Mania to kind of settle their score before then. I don't really need to see the whole Rock and Cody Rhodes thing drag on until then. I know we're not getting it now, so it's not like a year-long story, but because they're taking time off from it and going to go back to it. But I don't really want Cody to be in limbo until The Rock comes back, which may not be until Mania, which looks at this point is probably going to be the case, unless Rock comes back earlier than expected at SummerSlam. He could. That's what I originally expected. That's probably not happening at this point. The closer that we get to it, kind of looks a lot more unlikely at this point. I don't really like the idea of Rock, Rhodes, and Roman, though. I really don't. I think we need to move on from Cody and Roman. We don't need a third straight Mania with them in the main event together. Cody and The Rock is one thing. What would Roman do? You can have Roman face Solo Sikoa. Roman should be back before the end of the year. I don't know if he's back by SummerSlam, Survivor Series, even the Rumble. If they wanted to hold him out until Rumble, or if he's not ready to come back until Rumble, honestly, that's perfectly fine with me. Hopefully you can keep the Bloodline stuff interesting in his absence with Solo, Guerrillas of Destiny, and whoever else they might bring in. Obviously, Jacob Fatu is on the back burner somewhere. Whether he's aligning with them or with the Usos, we don't really know yet. But yeah, I could see them doing that. But I would much rather see Roman and Jacob Fatu at Mania next year, and then Cody and Rock one-on-one, as opposed to a triple threat match, with Rock, Rhodes, and Roman. I just don't really think that's necessary. We've already gotten so many triple threat main events at Mania. That is one that really doesn't need to be. Only to set up Rock and Roman again for Mania the following year, one-on-one. Like you said, Rock did say he's a long gamer. If they want to save Rock and Roman for Mania 42, I wasn't a fan of it. I'm still not a fan of it. I would rather we get that match before then and not 2 fucking years from now. But I would rather, if they are going to do that match in Mania 40, I would rather they not interact in the ring at all as opponents until then. So don't do the triple threat, is basically what I'm saying. Chris W. from YouTube, their first question was, he says, "Hi, Grim. Hope you're having a fine week. Had a great Memorial Day, and am wishing you a early happy birthday for this Sunday." Oh, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. He says, "Becky Lynch's contract is coming up in a few days, and there are many who say that she will resign. You wrote resign here just as a heads up. There's a difference between resign and resign. You need the dash there between re and sign if you want it to mean resign, but I assume that's what you meant, though. Some who say that you will be all elite, and some who say that you will be taking a long hiatus and think over personal matters. Which of these three do you see as the more possible, the bigger possibility, and what are your thoughts on all three of these choices?" I really don't see why she would leave WWE. I could see her letting her contract expire only to come back with a bigger offer from WWE because they don't want her to leave or go to the rival promotion, whatever. I think it's a lot like the Drew McIntyre situation where it took him so long to finally re-sign with WWE. And those rumors were circulating for like well over a year until he finally re-signed about a month ago. And then, he came back around and said in an interview, "Yeah, I was never actually going to leave WWE." Well, it was probably one of the situations where he wanted a bigger deal out of the company, and for whatever reason, he just waited to re-sign that new deal. And he didn't just re-up right away. That's probably not smart business-wise. It's probably not smart business-wise anyway. Becky Lynch is probably taking a very similar approach, I would have to imagine. I just don't see what the point would be of her going to AEW. Between the fact that she and Seth have a kid together, Seth just re-signed probably for a lot of money from WWE. I assume it would be way more inconvenient because she travels with her daughter, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they travel with the kid together. Why go to AEW? They just signed Mercedes Moné. So her deal, like if Mercedes did not go to AEW and Mercedes, let's say, went back to WWE, Sasha Banks instead, AEW would probably be willing to offer her a lot more money. They would still offer her a shit ton of money for her to come in, obviously, if she was a free agent. As they should. It would be very dumb for them to not offer her a lot of money, the star of Becky's caliber. And she wouldn't be Becky Lynch, but she could be Rebecca Lynch or Rebecca Quinn or whatever the fuck it would be. I just feel like her star there is not as crucial to AEW. It should not be as much of a priority to AEW to bring her in if they already have Mercedes Moné and all these other great women they have since signed in the last 5 years to build up this great division. AEW is a very stacked women's division. They don't need Becky Lynch. It would be a great get for them, but what I'm saying is the fact they don't really need her as much as they probably needed Mercedes, and even her run hasn't been great so far, but she and Willow had a really good match on Sunday, and we'll see where they go with her from here as the AEW TBS champion. They don't really need her as much as they did probably 2, 3, 4 months ago. So the amount of money that she would get from them would be probably less than what WWE would offer, I would have to imagine, to keep her, because she is one of their featured female stars in WWE. Again, her husband's there. She's done a lot of great work. She has that built-in equity with WWE, stuff like that. So I don't think she's going anywhere. I could see her taking time off. I could see her, you said, think over personal matters. I mean, I think it might be more of a case of, and we don't know this, I'm just speculating here, maybe she wants to have a second kid. Very possible. I mean, her first daughter is about, 4 or 5 years old now? Probably 4 years old. Maybe not even that, actually. Probably like 3.5. It's crazy to think it's been that long, but I'm pretty sure they had their daughter in late 2020, so she's probably not even 3.5 yet. She might want a second kid and might be taking time away to work on that, like Ronda Rousey did 4 or 5 years ago, where she took time off from WWE with the intention of having a child. She did. She came back right after she had birth. Right after she gave birth to her daughter, I think she had. She came right back to WWE. So Becky Lynch could be in a similar spot. I don't think she is. I think she just might want to take time off. Just because it hasn't been reported doesn't mean that's not the case. But yeah, I could see her probably leaving on Saturday and her technically being a free agent, but then she comes right back around to re-signing, or she does re-sign and they're quiet about it and she resurfaces on Raw in the next couple of weeks or months. So there really isn't much more for her to do right now anyway in WWE. So for her to take time off and go away, only to come back in time for like SummerSlam, so to speak, where maybe she teams with Lyra or she faces Io Sky, or she faces Lyra or Liv Morgan again, which I doubt. By that point, it should be Liv and Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship. There's a lot of different directions they can go in. So they can't afford to lose. I mean, WWE can't afford to lose Becky Lynch. They have a lot of female stars as it is, a lot of star power across both brands. She can afford to take time off. Raw would need someone like her around, though, with Rhea Ripley being injured and Becky being gone. That's a big blow to that Raw women's division. They still have a lot of women, and a lot of talented women at that as well, but no one on the level of a Becky Lynch, in my opinion, especially with Rhea Ripley being gone. Liv Morgan's great, but Becky being gone is a big blow to that show. So she can take time off, and that's perfectly fine. Like I said, if there really isn't much more for her to do right now, that would be perfectly fine. But I ultimately see her coming back. Just my opinion, though. I mean, would she go to AEW? Is it possible? I guess. But again, I just don't really see the point. It's not like we're with Edge, where Edge was like, I have a couple good years left in me. I don't really want to stick around to do nothing. There's a lot of people I haven't worked with yet. My best friend Christian works over there. I want to retire in 3 years and go out as an active performer. Becky is not retiring, I don't think, in the next 3 years. Her husband works in WWE. I don't know what or who of her friends works in AEW. I'm not really sure. So, I don't know. I guess it's possible, but it's very, very, very unlikely. So the All Elite Becky stuff, I just find to be laughable because I just don't really think she's going anywhere. But again, we've seen stranger things happen, so I guess you can't really count out anything in the world of wrestling, and we'll probably find out soon what her next move is. His next question: Monday's opening segment with Damian Priest, Gunther, and Drew McIntyre was a segment I felt made little to no sense. You had two heels in Gunther and Priest slack-jawing each other in the middle of the ring with very little to no chemistry, and the crowd wasn't into it. And even when McIntyre enters the picture, it still feels like a lifeless segment. Unfortunately, this felt like another one of those segments where Priest does not feel as important as the others in the segment, and he's the world champion. He's also been placed in a lose-lose situation where he's going to lose the belt to either Drew and Gunther, or Gunther, I think you mean, not both. I guess maybe he could lose to Drew and then get it back and lose it to Gunther, I guess. I don't know. But then you said, and even if he does beat Drew, it would be a tainted win and he's going to lose the belt to Gunther at SummerSlam. Is Damian Priest struggling as the world champion on Raw, or is it just that Triple H did not have a fleshed out game plan on how to book him and instead just put him in as a placeholder? Yeah, listen, I like Damian Priest's reign so far. He's only been champion for about a month and a half, 2 months. I've liked the promos that he's cut on Raw. I like the segment on Raw. I know the crowd was into it, but like you said, all three guys are heels. There really was no incentive from the crowd to cheer for any of those guys. It is a confusing, odd dynamic. I'm not disputing that at all. I think they kind of need to do a better job of fleshing those dynamics out because we are probably getting Damian and Drew. We are getting Damian and Drew at Clash of the Castle, and then Damian and Gunther at SummerSlam, I would think. And the only reason why I say that, I would have put the World Championship on Drew at Clash of the Castle, but if Punk's going to be back by SummerSlam, is probably the goal. I assume that's probably what's going to happen. That match does not need to be, and would not be, for the World Heavyweight Championship, because Gunther's already got the shot. So they're not doing Punk and Drew for the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam. That does not need to be for the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam. It could have been, but if Gunther's already getting the shot on that show, then if Drew would have won the belt, then we're not getting that match for the championship on that show. And then to hot potato it back and forth between Drew and then back to Damian, only to give it to Gunther, would just be fucking confusing. So I would much rather Damian just hold on to it until SummerSlam. Yeah, I mean, is he a placeholder champion? I think every champion is a placeholder champion. I mean, you could have said the same thing about Rollins when he was champion 3-4 months ago. He was only holding the belt until this guy were to beat it for him at WrestleMania. It was probably going to be Punk, and then it ended up being Drew. So I don't really like the whole placeholder thing. It's not like he was champion for a month. By SummerSlam, Drew will have been world champion for like 4 months. The Jey Uso match was really good. I assume the Drew McIntyre match at Clash is going to be really good. They're going to be super behind Drew in Glasgow, so it's not really going to have to deal with that heel versus heel thing. Gunther and Damian's going to have a weirder dynamic, but Damian, he is still a heel, but it seems to me anyway, and I might be giving them too much credit, but it seems to me anyway, they're gradually turning him babyface. And they're ultimately going to have the rest of the Judgment Day turn on him, or he's going to split away from them. Rhea Ripley will probably also be away from the rest of the group as well, and they'll kind of gradually dissolve the Judgment Day. So Damian might be a full-on babyface come SummerSlam, and it won't really be a problem of a heel versus heel world championship matchup. Gunther should win anyway. If Gunther is getting the shot on that show, and I think he is, he should absolutely win. But yeah, I like the segment on Monday. I like what Damien's been doing as champion. If you don't love what he's been doing, that's totally fine. I get everything of what you're saying. I just don't personally agree because I've liked his work in the ring. I've liked his work on the mic. I've liked what they're doing with him. It doesn't feel like he's world champion just to be world champion. He's on the show every week. Again, he already had his championship defense earlier this month at Backlash. He's going to defend again at Clash of the Castle. They didn't shoehorn him on to King and Queen of the Ring for no reason, for a random title defense. No, they held him out because they wanted to plant the seeds for the stuff with Drew at this upcoming show, which is exactly what they're doing. So they have that on the back burner, or coming up rather, the Gunther match on the back burner. They planted the seeds for that matchup, and they're also teasing tension within Judgment Day. So it kind of feels like, to me, he's got a lot going on right now. He's making the most of it, and he kind of feels, to me anyway, like a natural in that role as world champion. It's not like they put the belt on him because they didn't really have a plan for him. To me, it does feel like they have a plan, but that's just my own perspective anyway. Your next question, who is Sexy Red, and why should I care that she is coming to NXT? On top of that, why is NXT this desperate to get somewhat of a buzz by getting some random hip-hop artist on their show? I mean, this has been the case now since they turned over from what NXT was back in 2020, 2021 to NXT 2.0 in the late, in the final few months of 2021. They brought in a couple different rappers. I forgot her name, but they had someone come perform on the show, like maybe the theme song, or she is in the theme song, or they use one of her songs as the theme song. I don't fucking know. And I said the same thing then. This was like 2 years ago. I'm like, who the fuck is this person, and why should I give a shit? Do I give a shit about Sexy Red? No. I mean, I was going to say they kept her involvement limited to that opening segment last night. They didn't. She was in a couple backstage segments. She was involved in the main event match at ringside. I really don't give a fuck about Sexy Red personally. If she's a fan and she had fun, cool. They clearly are desperate to bring buzz and attention to NXT by doing stuff like that, because you don't really see the main roster doing that sort of stuff at this point. If they do that sort of stuff with the main roster, typically it is someone of note, like a fucking Pat Mahomes type situation when he was on Raw a couple weeks back when they were in Chiefs country. So NXT bringing in a random rapper that I've never heard of, you've never heard of. A lot of people probably watching the show have never heard of her, but it didn't take away from the show. She wasn't very good, but it was fine for what it was, so I really can't complain. But I don't really give a shit about her personally. I agree. I don't know who the fuck she is. I don't really give a fuck. But if that's what they think will boost ratings, more power to them, I guess. Your next question, what are your all-time favorite and least favorite belt designs? I always love the big gold belt, the 10 pounds of gold from the NWA, and the Attitude Era World Championship, but I've always hated the spinner belt, the TNA World title, and the worst of them all, the Divas title. What about you? Yeah, the Divas title, the butterfly belt, like it's cute and all for like a fucking 10-year-old girl, but as like a wrestling championship, I could never imagine us having something that ridiculous looking as a world championship worth fighting for in 2024. I guess it was worth, it looked cooler than the women's championship to me as a fucking 14-year-old 15 years ago, but that was 2008, 2009. The women's championship looked bland, but that was an actual prestigious title that they then retired that lineage for in 2010 when they just held on to the Divas championship, which was awful. But you never liked the Divas title. I'm curious what TNA World Championship you're talking about, because most of their belts have been fine. If you're talking about the Jeff Hardy Divas-looking championship, then sure, that one was pretty bad. I think New Japan has a championship like that. Now, I'm pretty sure their current World Championship looks like that, which is pretty comical. The spinner belt I liked as a kid. By the time they finally got rid of it in 2013, I was like, thank fucking God, the thing is trash. I vote my favorite belt design, this is going to be an out of left field answer here, and I liked all of the ones that you mentioned. I like the NWA title. The World Heavyweight Championship is probably up there as well, the big gold. I like the one that we have now for the World Heavyweight Championship, but the original big gold that WWE used, and WCW as well, but also that WWE used early on as the World Heavyweight Championship from 2002 to 2013. I was a big fan of that one as well. My favorite one, I don't know about to this day, but two of my favorite designs are the mid-card championships they used for such a long time. One, the United States Championship, not the one that we have now, which is nice, the one they used before that. And I know everyone's going to shit on it. People don't like it because it's a big gold fucking, red, white, and blue bell and whatever. I always thought it looked awesome. I always loved that United States Championship belt. I always said if I ever get a belt, that's the one I want. I ended up getting a belt as a gift from someone about 5, 6, 7 years ago. They got me the classic Intercontinental Championship belt, which worked out well because I've gotten signatures on it. I've talked about it before, but all former Intercontinental Champions have turned it into a gimmick, and it's a beautiful looking belt. I'm looking at it right now next to me. But the United States Championship was, in many ways, my first love for a wrestling championship belt. I always wanted that belt from Jakks Pacific because I used to collect the wrestling belts. My brother and I, as kids, when we first got into wrestling, like literally within months of watching wrestling and becoming fans, we would go to Toys R Us and ask our parents, beg our parents to get one of the belts they had on sale. And we got actually the championship that I own, the now Intercontinental Championship. It's the older one. I actually owned the newer one. My friend had that and gave it to me. The egg-looking championship, I still have that. Might be the only one I still own. But we bought like the women's championship at a fucking Halloween store, like the old women's title from '08 and before that. That older women's championship, we bought that at a Spirit Halloween store that summer or that fall for like $4 because they had it on sale as part of a costume. We had that. We had the Cruiserweight Championship. I don't know about the Cruiserweight Championship. We did have the Light Heavyweight Championship. I remember that. The WWE Tag titles, the World Tag titles. Always liked those designs. The World Tag Team titles they had in like '02 from 2010 or whatever. Really like that design as well. The red gold championship with like the world in the center of it. Always liked that design. But the United States Championship was one that always eluded me. I liked the $1 Million Championship too, and that wasn't really too realistic to buy because it was always so expensive online as like a toy. Not the real $1 Million Championship, but like a replica one. The toy one, I always wanted the United States Championship, but every time we would go, they never had it. And when they finally did have it, I think it was grounded at that point, so I couldn't buy it. 1 or 2 times they had it there, and I couldn't buy it. And it slipped me by, and I was never able to buy that championship before they eventually phased out the Jakks Pacific Championships in 2009, 2010, so I never ended up getting it. So I still do not own a replica United States Championship belt. Not the current one, not the one from like the fucking 90s, the one that they used in WWE from like 03 through 2020 or whatever it was, 2019 when they got rid of it. I think 2020 is when they had the new one. So that one I always liked. The white strap Intercontinental Championship that they had before the most recent one, I liked. The World Heavyweight Championship I mentioned. The one that we have now, but also the big gold belt that we had previously. That was always a really nice looking belt. The $1 Million Championship. So those are some of my favorites. Emmanuel A. from YouTube, his first question was, do you remember 2009 John Cena? I saw a Reddit post a while ago about someone binging WWE in 2009. And why the fuck anyone would do that, by the way, I have no idea. Because I watched that period. I own a Best of Raw 2009 DVD. And I can assure you there is nothing best about 2009 Monday Night Raw. But anyway, he continues. In noticing how marginalized and unimportant Cena felt for the first half of the year. He was a third wheel in the JBL, Shawn Michaels, and Edge and Vicky Big Show storylines. He was the third elimination in a chamber match and had a brief World Heavyweight Championship reign before going into literal mid-card feuds with the Big Show and The Miz. Compared to his other years on top, he didn't really feel like a top guy, and even his crowd reactions dipped significantly. Even when he slid back to the main event scene during the second half of the year, he was trading wins with Randy Orton, and 2009 ended with Sheamus beating him for the WWE title. Do you think WWE might have actually been considering replacing John Cena in 2009? No, I don't. I mean, all of that is accurate as far as what he was doing at that point. The crowd reaction slipping for Cena in 2009, I call bullshit on that. I do not remember that. I mean, you can go back to any event in 2009, and John Cena was still over than probably 90% of the roster, maybe even 95% of the roster, with the exception of like the Triple H's and the Shawn Michaels and the Undertakers. You mentioned all that stuff. Cena was still a regular on the show. He never took time off. Even after Big Show put him through that spotlight at Backlash, he returned like 3 weeks later to do the Big Show feud, to do the Miz feud. And even though of all the stuff that you mentioned, Cena beat every single one of those fucking people. He was still World Heavyweight Champion for a good part of the early months of 2009. They took the belt off of him, put it back on him, took the belt off him again, became WWE Champion within months. Of all the stuff that you just mentioned, he won, let's see, He started the year as World Heavyweight Champion, lost it inside the Elimination Chamber, okay? So he gets it back at WrestleMania. That's his second run right there. He lost it to Edge within a month at Backlash. So 2 pretty relatively short runs. He doesn't become world champion again until he wins the WWE Championship at Breaking Point. So that's 3. I know they also kind of flip-flopped the WWE title a lot in the summer of 2009 with Triple H and Orton, which is why Cena was not like main eventing, because they had Triple H and Orton. Triple H just got drafted back to Raw, and they were kind of the focal point there for a while. Cena was still involved in the WWE title picture a lot, so I'm not really sure where you're getting that narrative from, because he got back in the World Championship picture at July's Night of Championship. And I'm going all of this off of memory, by the way. I just remember 2009 vividly. It's a gift and a curse, for better or for worse. But he got back in the WWE title picture by that summer. He lost at the Night of Champions show. He came short at SummerSlam. Did win the belt at Breaking Point. So that was his 3rd run in 2009 as world champion. Lost it 2 or 3 weeks later at Hell in a Cell. And then got it back from Orton in a 4th match on pay-per-view, singles match, 5th match if you include the Night of Champions triple threat, at bragging rights to that great Iron Man match. So he was world champion 4 different fucking times in 2009. That is ridiculous. That is ridiculous. And none of those runs were any good. He lost that last world championship to Sheamus within 2 or 3 months. Not even 3 months. He won it in October, lost it in December. And even Sheamus he ended up beating a bunch of times in the months that followed. Yeah, he put over Sheamus, and that wasn't really a Cena issue necessarily. They were trying to push Sheamus and really put over the new era of WWE. Sheamus was booked terribly. That first run sucked. He lost the championship within 2 months. He was never the focal point of Raw. So Cena ended up beating Sheamus. He had that great triple threat at Survivor Series with DX. That was a great match. But like the Orton match had been done to death. They had feuded in 07. They feuded in 08. They had a string of matches in 09. And I enjoyed those matches. But they dragged that feud out for fucking forever. And again, he was the face of the show at that point. That was when Triple H was doing the DX stuff. So that's why Triple H wasn't in the World Championship picture. But even before that, like the Miz feud, you would think they were doing that to elevate the Miz. It really didn't elevate the Miz. The Miz got fucking buried in 5 minutes of the Bash pay-per-view when they did that match. He beat the Big Show. He won at WrestleMania. He won at the Royal Rumble. He lost at Elimination Chamber, but he ended up getting the World Heavyweight Championship back at WrestleMania. So I don't really believe the narrative that they were underutilizing John Cena and how he was marginalized. I remember all of those shows. I've gone back and watched those shows. I vividly remember following and watching WWE in 2009. John Cena was never, ever not even like a mid-carder. He was like an upper mid-carder. He was always the focal point of that show. Even when Randy Orton and WWE or Triple H were involved in the WWE title picture and he wasn't challenging for that championship, he was still very much a big part of Raw. It was Cena, it was Triple H, and it was Orton. Batista went over to SmackDown when he came back from injury. Batista was involved in a little bit in that picture in the early summer when he came back right after Mania. He got hurt in June, so he was only back for like 2 fucking months. So Cena took a backseat to him for a little bit as well. But for the most part, Cena was probably the face of Monday nights in 2009. So I don't really understand where that narrative comes from. I could see what you were talking about, I guess, but he pretty much dominated that entire year. If you wanted to talk about 2008, where on like 3 straight pay-per-views he lost clean, that was more shocking than anything he did in 2009. They were just putting the belt on that fucking guy in 2009 for the sake of putting the fucking belt on the guy. I mean, seriously, like in 2008, I was going to move on to the next question, but I just wanted to mention this. So Cena came back, and this was even weirder. Cena made that triumphant return to TV in the Rumble, as we all know, in the Rumble, winning the Rumble in 2008. He cashed in his title shot early at No Way Out, won by DQ, but did not win the championship, which was weird. They did that to set up the triple threat at Mania with him, Orton, and Triple H. You would think Cena, back from injury, would get the belt back in that show. He didn't. Orton retained. And then when he got another opportunity at Backlash the following month, he lost that too. It was a 4-way elimination match. He got beat there as well. He did the feud with JBL. They had a couple matches. He beats JBL. Okay. But then from that point forward, he faced Triple H for the WWE Championship and Night of Champions, lost clean, then faced JBL in a parking lot brawl at the Great American Bash. I mean, it wasn't like a singles match, like a straightforward, clean singles match, but JBL won that too. For what reason, I don't really know. I think because JBL was being set up for the World Heavyweight Championship at the following pay-per-view. But still, he lost that clean as well. And then he faced Batista at SummerSlam and lost there too. So Cena was doing a lot of jobs in 2008 on pay-per-view. And then he got hurt there. He came back within a matter of months and then won the World Heavyweight Championship in his first match back. And then it went on to what we were talking about in 2009. So if he made the comment like he was underutilized or not really focused on as much in 2008, that I would believe you with because he lost a lot on pay-per-view. 2009, not so much. His next question, following up on the previous question, he says, do you think Jeff Hardy could have overthrown John Cena as the face of WWE if he stayed in 2009? He was practically the most over guy in the industry that year and was notably outselling Cena in merchandise at that point, and he main evented his last 5 pay-per-views. Coincidentally or not, it was around that time that the rumors of Hardy taking an extended break or leaving WWE flared up, that Cena got back to competing for the WWE title. I know it's a hypothetical question, but do you think WWE would have went all the way with Jeff Hardy, or would they have always reverted back to John Cena as the face of WWE? I think they would have always reverted back to John Cena as the face of WWE for a couple different reasons. One, you're asking if Jeff Hardy stayed in WWE. You didn't say if Jeff Hardy stayed and stayed clean. That's the key there, because remember, as soon as Jeff Hardy left in late 2009, he was involved in that drug bust literally within weeks of having his last match in WWE. He did the SummerSlam match, put Punk over, and then put him over again in the subsequent SmackDown, and then left right after that. Literally within weeks, I think the police or FBI, whatever the fuck it was, raided his home, and he did jail time soon after. So if that was happening when he was still with WWE, and that was probably going to happen regardless, because it seemed like he was always having issues, and he took time off from WWE because of the schedule and the shit that he was doing, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if they would have fired him then or what, but he certainly wouldn't be the face of the company. And they put him on SmackDown for a reason. Jeff Hardy was never the guy they were going to run with as the face of the entire company. The face of SmackDown, sure. He was on SmackDown from 08 to 09 for a reason, because he was popular enough to where they could put that championship on him, but not the title. Maybe because they didn't really rely on him, knowing that he wasn't really all that reliable, knowing that he would always kind of dip back into those old habits and shit. I'm not really sure. I mean, obviously, he did challenge for the top championship on Raw quite a bit before he got drafted in 08, at least once at the Rumble, and he was very popular there. But the whole reason why the Jeff Hardy was drafted to SmackDown in 08 was because they knew Raw was Triple H's playground, John Cena's playground. Triple H went to SmackDown in 08 too, but not for very long. I mean, he ended up going, and he dominated that show, but Triple H was also the face of Raw as soon as he got drafted back. Cena was always the face of Monday nights. He was always the franchise player. He would always be able to do the, sponsorship deals, do the media, shit like that. Jeff Hardy wasn't really that guy. Jeff Hardy's outstanding. He was always super popular. I've always been a big Jeff Hardy fan, but he was not going to be the guy to be able to go out and do that and be able to rely on him too, given his past issues and also upcoming issues that we had not found out about, or at least not been publicly aware of at that point. So I don't think so. Even if he stayed clean, like I said, even if he stayed clean, I still don't think they would have run with him for the other reason that Punk also got super popular, as hot as Jeff Hardy, if not hotter, in the summer of 2011. And they still did not run with Punk as the face of the company. They could have. He was outselling John Cena. I don't know if Jeff Hardy was ever outselling John Cena. He probably was for a little bit anyway. I don't know. But even then, and Punk was reliable, because obviously he's straight edge, but obviously he had a lot of shit to say about the company, but he was way more reliable and able to do the media and stuff like that, sponsorship deals and whatever. And it's not like he was this big buffed up guy, and Jeff Hardy wasn't either. I mean, they just did not look like John Cena was the other difference maker there. But the thing with Punk was that, again, he was reliable. He could have done all the stuff they had Cena doing, but they just did not run with Punk in that way. They didn't. He was just never the face of WWE the same way that John Cena was, because they were always going to rely on John Cena for that spot. So I just don't think, even if Jeff Hardy stayed, he was a bigger fish in a smaller pond in TNA, so he was able to do that stuff over in TNA, because again, it was a smaller company. He fucked them over anyway with the whole Victory Road bullshit. Would he have been able to get away with that in WWE? Probably not. That would have never happened in WWE, I don't think. But still, he probably would have embarrassed himself and got fired from there anyway. A lot like he got fired in 2021. I think it was. He came back in 2017, but the whole reason why he got let go in 2021 was because they just didn't seem as reliable, and there was like a discrepancy there with what he was doing or what he was not doing. But again, they were ended up ultimately proven right with what he got involved in a couple months later while he was in AEW, doing the whole DUI bullshit. They didn't let go of Jeff. They kept him on board, and now he's still there, and he's not really doing shit. He's probably going to leave when his contract expires. But he's just never been reliable. So and I don't think Jeff, maybe if he was clean, he had a much higher chance, and he didn't kind of, dip back into his old demons and stuff like that. But even if he was clean, I still don't think, had he stayed in WWE in 09, that he would have outslotted John Cena as the face of the company. Cena stayed in that spot for many, many years after that because they knew he was reliable. He was already over. He was a proven commodity. And Jeff Hardy was not reliable, and they just couldn't really rely on him in the way that they did John Cena. And again, even if he wasn't involved in that shit, they were already hitching their bandwagon to John Cena. I mean, they didn't even do that with Batista. Batista was older, obviously, but Batista didn't really have many issues. He got hurt a few times, but even Batista, they could have made him an equal face of the company, and he was for SmackDown, but he was big enough for SmackDown not to be the face of Raw. That was John Cena's playground. Jeff Hardy, same thing, I would say. Noel from Facebook, their first question was, do you see Becky Lynch staying with WWE or betting on herself and going somewhere else? I already answered this earlier. I don't think she's going anywhere. I don't really know about the betting on thing because if she goes to AEW, it's not really a risk. She would still be a star. She would still be paid a lot of money. It's not like Cody Rhodes where he's making a lot of money in WWE 10 years ago. And he's got to bet on himself and, go for less money elsewhere and try to become a bigger star. She's not really betting on herself. Like Edge, for example, did not bet on himself by leaving WWE. He was always going to be a big star in AEW. He did something most people weren't expecting by leaving a comfortable spot in WWE and going to the rival promotion, but he didn't really risk much by doing that. Again, he was always going to be paid a lot of money and be slotted well in whatever company he signed with. Becky Lynch, same thing. I will say this, though. In your question, you wrote, do you see Becky Lynch staying with WWE or beating on herself? That is what you wrote. You misspelled betting. So you wrote beating by accident, so I thought you wrote, you did write beating on herself, which I thought was funny. I just wanted to point that out. Your second part of your question here, do you think it's a good idea for Julia to debut for NXT given that she has a broken wrist? If it heals quickly, I think the idea per Fightful, Corey Brennan from Fightful, has been pretty adamant that it's going to be the Heatwave show against Roxanne Perez. I know they just brought in Jordan Grace, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But yeah, no, I think they're still eyeing that Heatwave show, which is early July. That's a little over a month. And if it isn't at that show, why Heatwave? Why can't it be their August show or a September show? I don't know. I don't really know why it has to be that show specifically. Maybe because it's on the road. The UFC Apex show on in next week is also on the road. That's in Vegas, but it's a much smaller arena, I believe, compared to the one they're running in Canada, which I think is the same arena they're going to be doing Money in the Bank in that next night or the night before, or whatever it is. So, yeah, I don't know why it has to be on that show specifically. They could always wait if she's not completely healed by then. I don't want her coming in if she's not 100%. But hopefully she does heal up quickly, and I'm looking forward to her eventual debut, because I haven't really seen much of her work. I've seen a few of her matches, but I've heard enough to where I'm excited to see her in the WWE environment, in NXT, competing for that championship against a quality opponent in Roxanne Perez. Christopher L. from Facebook, their first question was, MJF's return from the vignette of him in the home office to the fantastic promo we cut, I thought the whole thing was just perfect. His cadence, his intended homage to Triple H's return in 2002, the intensity, etc. I'm excited to have him back, but here's the thing. What's next? How would you book him? So that's the thing. Obviously we'll find out tonight on Dynamite, I would hope. But there's a lot of different directions you can go in with him. All right, so it kind of felt like he blew off the whole Undisputed Kingdom thing on Sunday by beating up Adam Cole, taking the dumb devil mask, and throwing it into the crowd. That to me felt like, hey, fuck this story. It's gone on for long enough. That group is trash. I'm moving on to something new. So I feel like there's three obvious directions you can go in with him right now. One, continuing that story, which I would probably do for the sole reason of just blowing it off and giving him something to do at Forbidden Door in his hometown of Long Island. There's that. The Team All Elite, Team AEW shit with the Elite. He has to get involved in that at some point. He is Mr. AEW. So, aside from like Kenny Omega or something, but he's still going to be out for a little while. I think MJF will be involved in that at some point. and then also going after the AEW World Championship. He was beaten for it. He left that night. We haven't seen him since, beyond Double or Nothing. So having him go back for the belt that he was beaten for by Samoa Joe against Swerve, a match they did plant the seeds for a few months back, actually, late last year, would be cool. So they can either explore that match, do the Team AEW Elite thing, which I would hold off on a little bit, or do the Undisputed Kingdom thing. So here's what I would do. Adam Cole is still out hurt. I think they're probably going to do that match at All In. They did the match at All In last year. If Adam Cole's good to go by All In, which he fucking should be, I hope, then they can do that match at All In. He can beat him there, and they can move on. I guess you could have Adam Cole win because he never beat MJF, and you can, I don't know. I just kind of want them to move on from that whole shit personally. But at Forbidden Door, I would first have him face Wardlow, which I know means nothing. I get it, but the fact they're in his hometown, like, that alone is the selling point for MJF on that show. Swerve will probably face Tanahashi or something like that. They're doing a gauntlet match tonight, the Casino Battle Royal. I guess MJF could win that. He probably shouldn't be going for the World Championship his first match back because he's not going to win. So I would have him face, not like Mike Bennett or Taven. He can beat those losers on TV. I guess you could do him and Roderick Strong. But I was thinking Wardlow, because Wardlow, the last time they did that match 2 years ago, Wardlow beat him. So MJF can beat him and get his win back, and then challenge for the championship, the world title, at the July show. They don't have a July show, right? I think it's... What are their next shows? They have this show. Isn't there another show after this? There's Forbidden Door. Is All In the next one in late August? I thought there was one in July. I don't remember, but maybe you can have him challenge for the championship on TV. Adam Cole comes back, costs him the championship, and then you do Cole and MJF at All In. That's probably what I would do. I would not even get him involved anywhere near the Team AEW All Elite stuff, the Elite stuff just right now, because what are you going to do? Have him face Okada right now? I mean, I guess, but I feel like the Undisputed Kingdom thing and the championship are two unfinished business items that he should probably tend to first before going after the Elite. So that's what I would do with the guy. His second question, who do you see taking part in the Owen Hart Memorial Cup this year? Do you like the fact that both winners get title shots at All In? And who do you see winning it who do you see winning it for both brackets? I do like the fact they get title shots. I think that's great to add stakes. I've been saying that since they did the first one 2 years ago when they got those pointless belts. It's a lot like King of the Ring. I didn't really mind King of the Ring not having stakes because at least that has a history of being prestigious in the past. Not really in recent years, but I mean, it has a long lineage. The Owen Hart Cup thing was just another excuse for them to do another fucking tournament. Like, if they want to pay homage to Owen Hart, that's great. But if nothing really comes out of it for the winners, then what's the point? So they do have title shots on the line, which I feel like it makes it a lot more obvious who might win, which is fine. If there's something at stake, then I'm okay with that. I don't know who's going to be part in it because they have a fucking million people on their roster and they usually throw in random people. Like people like Kyle O'Reilly, I could see being in it again. Maybe Pac or Jay White. I mean, it sounds like another Continental Classic, really. But I feel like you got to have Will Ospreay win it for the men. He should definitely be challenging for the World Championship at All In. I don't know who else it would be. I guess you could have it be MJF or someone like that. I would probably just do Ospreay, having Ospreay win the whole thing. And then for the women, Mariah May. I feel like Mariah May and Toni Storm is the match to do for the All In show, and probably have Mariah May beat her for the belt there. Your next question was, although he's only been there for nearly 8 months, I have really been a fan of Adam Copeland's run in AEW. He has had multiple excellent matches, cut some great promos with that same edge, cadence, and intensity, told a strong story with Christian resulting in that wonderful I Quit brawl back in March. I've even thought some of his stuff with Malachi has been well done. I did see, however, that some people were actually glad to see him break his leg on Sunday, and I shake my head in shame that I breathe the same air as these people. What are your thoughts on those people? And my real question is, do you think Adam Copeland's work in AEW so far has been underappreciated? Good question. First of all, you're right. Anyone that was glad to see Edge break his leg is fucking stupid. I thought the spot itself was stupid. I said that on Twitter, and I reiterate, it was very dumb for him to do that. And he said that in his video, like, oh, I'm 50, I kind of forget what my body can take and what my body's capable of, stuff like that. It was super dumb for him to do that spot. Because now they probably have to relinquish the championship, fucks up whatever plans they had for the belt. He's probably going to be off All In. That sucks. He really should not have done that. And honestly, I also blame people in the back for not telling him no. They should have told him, hey, don't do that. And someone had to respond. I got a couple responses in my tweet about the whole Adam Copeland thing. Some people said, one person had mentioned if he had just done a normal splash, then he would have been fine. But he couldn't do that, though, either. Because Malachi Black was, I think, wrapped up in the barbed wire, right? So if he just did a regular splash, he probably would have fucking impaled himself. So that's why he had to do that awful looking. It wasn't even a dumb spot anyway. It did look bad. It looked bad regardless. Because he was kind of going for like an elbow or something. He barely touched him. It was really weird. It did not look good. So, and the reason why he barely touched him was because, again, if he really went all in on him, no pun intended, he probably would have severely hurt himself even more on the barbed wire. So it was a dumb spot to begin with. Just do a crossbody or something. That probably would have worked better. No barbed wire involved. It was just a dumb spot to do. But to say that you're glad that he broke his leg, you're just an imbecile. So obviously, don't pay any attention to those people. As far as his work so far in AEW, has it been underappreciated? No, I think it's been properly rated. I don't think it's been overrated. I don't think it's been underrated. I don't think it's been underappreciated. I've been enjoying the run as well. Every point that you made, I completely agree with. I thought the Christian feud was great. They had some great matches. He's worked with a lot of new faces. He's had some pretty solid matches on TV. I like the House of Black feud. He's had a decent run so far, and it's probably over now as TNT champion because of the injury. But I liked what he was doing there, too, the Cope Open shit. I've enjoyed his run. I don't know. If people don't like it, that's totally fine. But I don't think people aren't paying attention to it, because anytime he has cut a great promo or had a great match, people have properly said, hey, it was good. So I don't really think it's overrated or underrated. It's probably somewhere right there in the middle as being properly rated, at least in my opinion. Your next question. Ever since the post-WrestleMania, I feel like these shows on Mondays and Fridays aren't as exciting or as hot as they were when The Rock was on there. Some of the shows are usually very good, but there's nothing that pops out of the screen or must-see or as must-see or amazing. Monday's show is a prime example, as there was a dullness and coldness to the show that I felt throughout, with the exception of some segments or matches. I especially hated the ending of the show and thought the main event sucked. Do you feel these shows haven't been the same or just not as must-see or as exciting without The Rock being there? I only mentioned The Rock because there was an energy and a must-see aura to him when he was on the shows, and now that he's gone for a while, the shows have not been the same. Do you agree? Of course I agree. The Rock not being there is a blow, because The Rock probably is the most must-see performer on that show. Not even probably, he was/is. So of course when you have The Rock appearing fairly regularly from the Rumble to WrestleMania, and then he's not there anymore, of course the shows are going to suffer. So that I do agree with. But between Rock not being there, Rhea got hurt, Roman Reigns isn't there for right now, Rollins took time off, Punk isn't there for right now, Drew hasn't really been wrestling lately because he did get hurt. A lot of people are gone right now in WWE. Charlotte still isn't there, but that's not really a big blow to the roster, I would say. I mean, it is a blow, but it's not like when you have all of these people compounded together at the same time, not being on television, it certainly is a blow to the product. That said, I have enjoyed the shows mostly since Mania. I think they've done a good job, at least in my opinion, of maintaining my interest. I'm not saying it's been great and you're not a fan if you don't agree. What the fuck are you watching? No, I think it is all personal preference. Are the shows as exciting as they were pre-Mania? No, they are not. But they have still been solid and sometimes very good. I really enjoyed Backlash. I thought King and Queen of the Ring was a very good show. The King and Queen of the Ring tournaments were a great way to kind of maintain momentum, bring back energy into the shows from Backlash to that show. I think they did a really good job of filling the time with those matches and making the matches feel more important. Really enjoyed that concept. Now we have Money in the Bank coming up in early July. We have Clash at the Castle before then, which should also be a hot show in Glasgow. So, no, I've been enjoying the shows mostly. They have storylines going on. Cody Rhodes facing the opponent of the month isn't really anything exciting as far as long-term storytelling, but they're clearly keeping him busy until SummerSlam or until The Rock returns or both. I still don't think Rock's coming back for that show. I thought that initially, like I said earlier, as it gets closer, probably not happening. But I've still been enjoying the Cody stuff. He's still on pretty much every single show. Since Mania on SmackDown, he's been a nice addition to that show. So I've been enjoying Raw and SmackDown, but if you have not been liking it or if you haven't been enjoying it, that's totally fine. If you feel that it has not been as exciting or as must-see since Mania, you're right, because you're right. I mean, that is obviously subjective, but I would definitely agree with that because The Rock is not around, along with other people. But that's typically the case with the post-WrestleMania lull. It's called the post-WrestleMania lull for a reason. And hopefully, we can only hope anyway, it would pick up even more as we get closer to Money in the Bank and SummerSlam. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, their first question was, The Undertaker feels that the women's division on the main roster should have a mid-card title, much like how the women on NXT are getting one. What do you think? I've said that for a while, but the thing is, I would not overcomplicate things by having the WWE Women's Championship, the World Women's Championship, and the tag titles, and a mid-card belt. Just get rid of the mid-card belt, get rid of the tag titles and replace it with a mid-card belt. I think to have all of those belts, they have enough women for all of those belts, but the tag titles really do not mean anything. So you might as well get rid of them and bring in a mid-card championship. NXT used to have tag team titles too. NXT had their own set of women's tag team titles. They got rid of them last summer. Whether that was a Triple H or Vince decision, we have no idea. But they got rid of those NXT women's tag team titles, merged them with the WWE tag team titles. Haven't really defended them in NXT, which is kind of weird. But, haven't really done anything with that. And now they have a mid-card championship. Would they have had the tag titles, a mid-card title, and the main women's championship? Maybe, but that to me, especially in NXT, would have been overkill. So I think the fact they got rid of the pointless tag titles and are now replacing it with a mid-card championship is perfect. The main roster, in my opinion, a lot like Taker said, should follow suit. Your second question, your thoughts on Shawn Michaels booking NXT? I think Shawn Michaels does a really good job of booking NXT. It's kind of simplistic, formulaic booking, which can get a bit tiresome and dull. It's a lot like how Triple H books the main roster. The difference with the main roster, though, you have a lot more stars to work with, bigger stars to work with on a bigger budget. In NXT, his booking isn't always great. I don't know if he's to praise for all the great stuff and to blame for all the bad stuff. I would think so. I don't know how many other people are influencing those decisions with some of the shit they're doing. Was it Shawn Michaels' decision to bring in Sexy Red? I have no fucking clue. The shows are largely solid. The issue is they haven't really done anything to replenish the pot. They lost so many stars to the main roster in the draft that they don't really have a whole lot of people to kind of build off of. That being said, last night's show didn't solve that problem, but it did help with it. So Jordan Grace is not signed to NXT. They're obviously using her while she's in TNA as the Knockouts champion. They have a lot of women in NXT right now. No one really feels ready to face Roxanne Perez for that championship. But using people from TNA on NXT in kind of a mutually beneficial partnership, I think is great. Ethan Page is not a part of TNA, but he's in NXT as a full-time performer. That's a nice name to have on that show. I think he's a great fit for NXT. Someone asked me about Ethan Page here on the show a few weeks back when his AEW contract expired. I was never like the biggest Ethan Page fan. I thought he was a great get for AEW when he showed up there. I wasn't a big fan of his TNA work a few years ago. I liked the North, but like some of the shit that he was doing towards the end of his TNA run was not great. He goes to AEW, has a good run there, but they just kept putting him with Scorpio Sky, putting him in random fucking tag teams, stables, groups. He would make the most of his opportunities, but all of that shit was just like, I don't give a fuck about this guy at this point, because it's not like he's exceptional in the ring. He's good in the ring, but his real strong suit was on the mic. They never really let him talk all that much, and when they did, he would immediately get beat by whoever he was facing. And then they put him in Ring of Honor, and I thought he was getting over well over there as a likable babyface, and that didn't really go anywhere, and Ring of Honor is a sinking ship anyway, so NXT is a great fit for him. I'm glad to see him in the spotlight right from the get-go. In the NXT Championship picture, he's not going to win the belt from the get-go, I don't think, but it's a great spot for him to be in. So that's one way of kind of bringing in star power to the show. So back to your original question. I think Shawn Michaels has done a commendable job of booking NXT. Doesn't make the show great. Some of the storylines I don't give a fuck about, like the Idris Enofe, Malik Blade, we're on a losing streak. Like, what is this nonsense? A lot of that shit is just stupid. The metaphor, awful. But, overall, I think he does a decent job. Your third question. Do you think that Serena Deeb would be a perfect fit for the Blackpool Combat Club? I do. I think we've said that before. Other people have suggested that. I like that idea of her joining Blackpool Combat Club. But the group has been around for so long now, over 2 years. They haven't added any members since Claudio that same summer. It's not really worth it now. I don't really even think the Blackpool Combat Club is long for AEW anyway. Mox is kind of off doing his own thing. And Danielson's going to be winding down / leaving in August, come All In. Wheeler Yuta's not even around right now, so it's not even really worth it. She's just not over. I like Serena Deeb a lot, but people just don't really care about her, and that's been evident for a while now, even before she got hurt. So it would be nice if she joined the group. She would be a nice fit for it, but at the same time, I feel like if it was going to happen, it should have happened a lot longer ago. It should have happened in like 2022. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from a Twitter machine and on YouTube, Real Honesty with John Ritland. Check out his content, does great work. His first question was, now, while Double or Nothing has had its moments with both positive and negative, has had moments that are both positive and negative, doesn't AEW need some quality control as far as the length of the pay-per-views go? Abso-fucking-lutely. Listen, I am much more of a less is more type person. You might have a different opinion. Not you, John, but just in general. You might have a different opinion on, I like more matches for my money, and I want 15 matches and all this other sort of shit. I like the shorter shows. Whether I'm paying $10 or $50, even if I'm there, I would much prefer a shorter, concise 5-6 match card than a 5-hour show, including a pre-show that is pointless. WWE had a 2-hour pre-show for King and Queen of the Ring, but beyond that, the main card was less than 3 hours. AEW's main card was 4.5 hours, and it was also later on at night. I mean, the Saudi Arabia show was at night there. East Coast, it started in the afternoon. Just watching it on TV, a shorter show to me is better. If it's like an hour, then obviously not. But if it's like 2.5, 3, maybe 3.5 hours without a pre-show, that is just prime right there. That's perfect timing. AEW really needs to cut down on that shit. The thing is, people would argue, well, they have less pay-per-views. They got to get everyone on the show. Not really. That's a bullshit excuse. Because they don't have quarterly pay-per-views anymore. They have like 9 fucking pay-per-views in a given year. They didn't have one in January or February, but they did have one in March, had one in April, they have one this month, and they have one in June. So they really do not need to have 4.5-hour pay-per-views and have everyone on the fucking show when they could save some of these matches for TV or the subsequent pay-per-view, a lot like WWE is doing right now. They did not need Orange Cassidy and Trent Beretta on that show. That served no fucking purpose on that pay-per-view. The FTW Rules match, same thing. I don't give a fuck if it's Chris Jericho and he wants to be on the Double or Nothing show. Who gives a shit? The match wasn't that great. No one gave a shit, and it accomplished nothing. Put it on TV or don't do it at all. It did not need to be on the show. It was a waste of time. So, yeah, they really need to cut back on the length of the shows. I've just gotten used to them ending at midnight Eastern time, going from 8 a.m. God fucking damn it, that would be awful. Starting at 8 p.m., going to midnight. It's a 4-hour show. Okay, I don't think they need 4 hours, but whatever. That show on Sunday, whether people had Monday off or not, it went 4.5 hours, dude. The main event didn't start until midnight. That's ridiculous. That is fucking ridiculous. That is a long time to ask of people to even sit there, being in the building, or watching it on pay-per-view, or on TV, or whatever. That is ridiculous. I've been complaining about the pay-per-view lengths for a long time now, but Sunday show is just egregious. That was the next level of stupid. 4.5 hours. Well, I don't care if you're paying $50 or not. Give me $50 for a quality show. The quantity does not mean better than quality. I would rather take quality personally over quantity of matches. His second question, depending on what reports you believe, Tony Khan is either not thrilled with the new rights deal offer or WBD is just playing hardball. Do you think AEW will get a bigger increase in their TV deal, or could they just be getting the same offer they're on? I honestly would be really surprised if they got the same offer or less of an offer from WBD, from Warner Brothers Discovery. I talked about this a week or two ago, so I won't spend too much time on it. But with the NBA leaving, they really should get an increase. An exponential, astronomical increase? No, that's not going to happen. That's not all that realistic. But they should get an increase nonetheless. They still, for all the ratings issues that people have said they had, and they do have ratings problems of not really growing their audience, the viewership is down from what it is week after week from where it was a few years ago. It's still doing better than most shows on that network, I would have to imagine, aside from like the NBA and shit like that. Rampage and Collision are completely pointless, but Dynamite itself is still their flagship show. From what I understand, they have a pretty good relationship. I would be really shocked if they got a less of an offer, a lower deal than they did the time before a few years ago. It really should be higher. I think it will be higher. A lot higher? Probably not, but it will be higher. That's my prediction. Your third question. So WWE had a few options to win the Queen of the Ring tournament, and they chose Nia. Have they lost their damn minds? Listen, I honestly didn't mind it. This might sound nuts, especially coming from me as someone who has just been a notorious Nia hater, so to speak. But I've also said since she's come back, she has gotten better. She looks better. I mean, she's lost weight, which is not really a problem, but I think it does help her in the sense, like, whether she's fat or not, it really doesn't, no one really should give a shit. But it does help in the sense where I think, honestly, maybe losing some of the weight did help her in ring work a little bit. I could be wrong, but we haven't really seen or heard anything about her hurting people the same way that she was a few years ago. She has improved since she's been back. I mean, that's just, not even debatable. Doesn't mean you have to like her, but they've booked her well. She's been a nice foil for some of the baby faces on the roster. She's had some good matches. So I think it's fine. I don't love the decision, but Nia versus Bayley at some point is coming. We've seen it before. Not really an overly exciting idea. I'd rather see the belt on Tiffany at this point instead of Nia. But it's fine if they continue to book her well. And, you don't really need to make her the face of the division. She will be champion again, I think. And I think that's fine as long as they build up someone to beat her. Again, this is much better than Nia from a few years ago. So it's much more tolerable to me. It's not ideal, but it's certainly much more tolerable, and I commend them for the way they booked her, and even Nia herself for improving her in-ring work, improving her physique, and obviously not hurting as many people, so that's nice. The average grunt from Twitter, their first question was, can we pretty much assume that there will be an FTR versus Bucks 5 at some point? What match type would you want to see them do? A cage match, or maybe a 2 out of 3 falls match? Yeah, I think a 2 out of 3 falls match would be nice. I was going to say because it's the 5th match, a 4 out of 5 falls would be interesting or fitting, but that just seems like a lot, so probably not. You could still do like an hour-long 2 out of 3 falls match. FTR proved that in their match with Bullet Club Gold, Juice Robinson, and Jay White last summer on Collision, and that was like almost an hour long. But yeah, they will probably do a 5th match at some point. I would not do it anytime soon. We just got the ladder match between them at Dynasty. They've spread out the matches. They had one in 2020. They had the sequel in 2022, right, in Boston on Dynamite. The 3rd match happened at All In 2023, and the 4th match happened at Dynasty 2024. So you really don't need to do the 5th match this year. You could wait until, before they're done, one final finale, no interference, no bullshit. A 2 out of 3 falls match would be fine. Cage matches I'm just numb to because they don't really mean anything anymore, a la what we saw on Monday Night's Raw. But I think a 2 out of 3 falls match would be perfect given FTR's history in that stipulation. Their second question, which of these interchangeable match names do you prefer for a no DQ match? Hardcore, Extreme Rules, Street Fight, Unsanctioned, No Holds Barred, or just no disqualification? Probably Street Fight, because at least in a street fight, they typically dress in their street clothes. So it is a different no DQ match. The rules are still the same. But they do make more of an attempt to make it feel more like a street fight than just a no DQ match. Name-wise, probably No Holds Barred. That's always sound cool to me. A No Holds Barred match just sounds badass. But it's never really No Holds Barred. There is some shit they still don't do. Aside from that one No Holds Barred match in TNA many years ago where they banned, I think, pile drivers or some shit. And in that match, they brought it back and did a pile driver on, the exposed ring, on the hardwood ring or whatever. That was kind of cool. But beyond that, I can't really remember where a No Holds Barred match they did, and they actually used moves that were barred. But as far as, the actual match, probably Street Fight. His third question, how does the ladder match from WrestleMania 40 stack up against the previous Mania ladder matches? I felt like even though there were a small handful of fun spots and it had a feel-good finish rather, it was ultimately lacking, especially when compared to the others. No, it was fun, but it will not be remembered at all. I mean, the finish itself was cool, you're right, I liked the match, but WWE, AEW, all these companies do so many fucking ladder matches, they all just blend together. I can only name a handful that really stand out as being my favorite. I answered that question a couple weeks ago, a month or so ago. I don't know. It wasn't all that long ago. That will not go down as one of my favorites. I've seen a lot of ladder matches in person. That will not go down as one of the better ones. It was good, but they all kind of blend together at this point. So, it was definitely lacking, but that was, it wasn't really the point. I mean, the whole point of the match was to split the titles, not really to go in there and have this classic match, I would say. So it accomplished what it needed to, but the match itself wasn't really anything overly special. At noob_n_co TV, last 2 questions. First one being, What were your thoughts on this year's Double or Nothing? To me, I believed it was way too chaotic, he says. From the barbed wire cage match to anarchy in the arena. But I'm glad that we got new champions as well as a surprise return from MJF. I thought it was another really good show from AEW. I didn't overly love the show. There were some matches I wasn't a big fan of. The length was ridiculous. You could have cut out a couple of matches. I did still think it was a very good show. Every AEW pay-per-view is really good. That's really about it. I thought Mercedes and Willow probably had the best match. The opener was great. The MJF return was great. There were the fair share of highlights. The barbed wire cage match I liked. They made the most of the stipulation. I hated the fucking dumb elbow drop or whatever Edge was going for. I mentioned that earlier. The main event wasn't really my cup of tea. That shit, it was a spectacle, I'll say that much, but I just thought the whole thing was one giant mess, as it normally is. I thought Tony and Serena Deeb had a good match, and there was some other good stuff on the show. The trios match was fine, forgettable, but fine. Juice Robinson is back, okay. The show was good. It was very good even. Their last question, what are your thoughts on the surprise appearances of Jordynne Grace and Ethan Page on NXT? So I mentioned this earlier, why I think both of them are good gets for NXT. Jordynne Grace is not with NXT full time. She's still with TNA, which makes it even cooler. Because she's like one of the bigger stars in TNA right now is Jordynne Grace. They have fucking Moose, who I like. I like Moose, but Moose is not an overly exciting performer. And he's been there forever. And Jordynne Grace has been there a while, but she feels more relevant than Moose. I would love to see Moose in NXT doing some shit, but I doubt other people feel the same. But yeah, Jordynne Grace is the whole TNA working relationship. We've never seen from TNA someone actively on WWE television. I know they used her in the Rumble, and that was cool, but it's not like they used her subsequently on TV. Like, she's sticking around and doing some stuff with NXT through Battleground. Beyond that, I don't know. But doing an actual working relationship between the two companies is really fucking cool. Like, really, I don't think it's honestly sunk in yet how, big that is for WWE to be doing that. Because they never do that. They never have someone from another promotion of that level of TNA on their active television show. AEW has done that. WWE is not. It's way more taboo for WWE to be doing that. So I think that's pretty fucking cool. Ethan Page is actually signed there. And I think he is a great get for TNA. He could have been a great get for TNA, but it looked like he just bypassed going back to TNA and went right to NXT instead, which was interesting because I didn't think WWE would have a lot of interest right off the bat. They signed him pretty quickly. His departure was announced from AEW earlier this month, and already he finds himself in NXT, which is cool. So I'm glad they're giving him a shot, and NXT could use it because, again, the brand has really not been overly interesting or exciting or relevant even for a while now. So bringing in two new people like that to kind of aid the show, and make it better is a good move. So I like seeing them both in NXT. I will say this much, it's funny. I didn't watch the show live last night. I very rarely watch NXT live these days just because it's not, overly important most weeks. But I didn't look through Twitter. I would have. So Alexis and I were watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off. She'd never seen it. We watched it. I was watching that movie. She was on Twitter during the movie. And she saw, oh, can I show you this? It's a big spoiler. I'm like, is it NXT related? Well, just watch it after. And she said maybe. So I didn't have her tell me. And I'm glad we waited because I didn't watch all of NXT. I just kind of fast forwarded through it. I'm like, where could it be that she's talking about? So we got to the 9 o'clock hour and I see Roxanne Perez in the ring. She had told me it was women's related. So I'm like, okay, it's probably Roxanne Perez's opponent. And I'm thinking they're bringing in someone from the main roster, and then Jordynne Grace comes in. I'm like, holy shit. So that was a cool surprise. The Ethan Page one was a surprise, but you know what's funny? Your question actually not ruined it for me, but it spoiled it for me. So what happened was, because I thought the Jordynne Grace thing was the biggest surprise from the show. And I probably would have gone on Twitter while I was catching up on NXT anyway, so it probably wouldn't have been just your question. But we watched the Jordynne Grace thing. I rewind NXT to start it from the beginning. After the movie's over. And then I tweet out the question. I need more, not need more questions, but I ask, if you have any questions, send them in, blah, blah, blah. I still had my notifications tab open on Twitter, and I see your question pop up before I finished the show. And you said Jordynne Grace and Ethan Page, and my heart dropped. Fuck, I just ruined this for myself. I thought the Jordynne Grace thing would be the only thing that they did on NXT last night. Then they had Ethan Page show up too, which was really cool. So when he showed up, it wasn't surprising because I had already seen your tweet, but it was cool to see that he was in NXT. So that was not your fault. That was my fault for thinking that NXT would not do anything overly important. And I guess it's not really my fault even either, because they never really do anything important on the weekly television show at this point. It's kind of just throwaway television most weeks. So, and I even said to someone earlier in the day, yeah, it's not really must-see TV. I don't really watch it live. I catch up after the fact because they don't really do anything that feels, that's really overly shocking anymore on the weekly show. But then they did last night, so I thought that was cool. Thank you guys for sending in questions to the show per usual. This was fun, as it always is. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.gsm.Matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not in the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, guys. I'm Graham GSM Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.